This is the Google Pixel 6, Google's flagship smartphone for the year of 2021. But 2021 was 3 years ago now. The Pixel 9's out, the iPhone 16 series is about to be released. So how has this phone held up over the last 3 years? Is it still usable in 2024? Still worth purchasing? Well, that's what we're going to be going over in this video. Just like most of my other review videos where I review an older phone in the current year, I'll go over the specs of the phone, give my opinion, and then it's up to you guys to decide down in the comments whether or not you think it's worth it in 2024. Now, I used this phone for about 2 weeks, which I think is long enough to go ahead and give a full review on it. Now, some backstory. I switched from my iPhone 14 Pro over to this Google Pixel 6 because I was simply sick of iOS and wanted a change. I really enjoyed my experience, and I made a separate video on my experience with Android, link in the top right. But now it's time for a review on the specific phone. Anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now, as a point of comparison, I'm going to be comparing the Google Pixel 6 to Apple's iPhone 13, their 2021 base model flagship phone. Let's start by talking about the cameras. Now, both of these phones come with a dual camera setup on the back, whereas the Google Pixel 6 has a 50 megapixel main sensor and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. The iPhone 13, on the other hand, has two 12 megapixel sensors, one main sensor and an ultra wide sensor. Now, the Pixel 6's 50 megapixel camera compared to the latest iPhone 15 Pro's 48 megapixel camera is right up there with it. After using the phone for 2 weeks, taking some photos and comparing them to my experience with the photo quality on the iPhone 14 Pro, which also has that 48 megapixel sensor from Apple, I found the quality of the photos to be neck and neck. So the camera of the Google Pixel 6 in 2024 definitely holds up to the latest standards. Now, of course, there are only two camera sensors. There is not a third telephoto or periscope camera. And that ultra-wide lens is a 12 megapixel lens, but the ultra-wide being 12 megapixels is no difference from the newest iPhone 15 series or the iPhone 14 Pro, so that doesn't really matter. Overall, the cameras of the Google Pixel 6 in 2024 definitely hold up to the latest standards, and when compared against Apple's flagship from the same year, I hate to say this, but the cameras really blow it out of the park. Now let's switch over to talking about the display. Now, the Google Pixel 6, even if it doesn't look like a very large phone, well, you can kind of see it when I put the iPhone 13 right up next to it, but even though it doesn't look like a particularly large phone, it actually has a 6.4-inch display with a resolution of 1080 by 2400 and a refresh rate of 90 Hz. Now, in 2024, 120 Hz displays on smartphones is starting to become the standard. The latest base iPhone 15 only has a 60 Hz display though. Meanwhile, the Pro iPhones have the beautiful ProMotion 120 Hz display. But 90 Hz on the Google Pixel 6 display is a great midpoint. It's considerably smoother than the 60 Hz on the iPhone 13 or even the base model iPhone 15. And in 2024, the Pixel 6 display is still a gorgeous AMOLED display panel. It's sharp, and that 90 Hz refresh rate makes it really smooth and actually really enjoyable to use. Even when switching from my iPhone 14 Pro with a 120 Hz display, of course, I noticed a small difference going from 120 to 90, but the difference was nothing like going from 120 to 60. When I'm using a phone with a 60 Hz display, I can actually see the difference since I'm so used to a 120 Hz screen. But using the 90 Hz display, unless I compare it side to side to my iPhone 14 Pro, I really can't notice a difference. Meanwhile, like I said, the iPhone 13 has a 60 Hz display that is 6.1 inches diagonally with a resolution of 1170 by 2532, which is actually a larger resolution on a smaller screen than the Google Pixel 6, meaning it does have a slightly higher PPI, 460 on the iPhone 13 compared to 411 on the Pixel 6. But the Pixel 6 display is still extremely sharp, and the 90 Hz refresh rate is a huge win compared to a 60 Hz display, and most definitely holds up to a budget-ish standard in 2024. Now let's talk about the batteries for a moment. The Google Pixel 6 comes with a 4,614 milliamp hour battery, which even when compared to the iPhone 14 Pro is a lot larger than the 3,200 milliamp hour battery inside of this thing. Now, the iPhone 13 has a 3,240 milliamp hour battery, and the Pixel 6's incredible 4,600 milliamp hour battery is actually larger than the iPhone 15 Pro Max's 4,441 milliamp hour battery. The battery life from my 2 weeks of using the Pixel 6 was absolutely incredible. I'm not joking. I would charge it one night, wake up with 100% battery, and plug it in the next morning, 24 hours later, on around 30%. Now, my battery health is 100%, so if you have a lower battery health, of course, your battery life is going to be affected. But the battery on the Google Pixel 6 is, in all honesty, the best battery that I have ever experienced firsthand in a smartphone. That's mainly just because I have been a tried and true iPhone user for the past 6 years or so, but seriously, the battery in the Pixel 6 is absolutely ridiculous. Now let's move on to the processing speed. The Google Pixel 6 was Google's first phone to include their Google Tensor chip, their own special silicon, just like Apple develops their own silicon, such as the Apple A15 Bionic in the iPhone 13. Now, the Google Tensor chip comes with 8 gigabytes of RAM for the phone, which holds up great to today's standards, whereas the iPhone 15 Pro Max with the Apple A17 Pro chip has 8 gigabytes of RAM as well. The iPhone 13 only has 4 gigabytes of RAM with its A15 Bionic, and my iPhone 14 Pro has 6 gigabytes of RAM with its A16 Bionic. While using the Pixel 6, I noticed absolutely zero stuttering, which sounds crazy for a phone from 3 years ago, but in all honesty, it was extremely smooth and extremely quick. Those 8 gigabytes of RAM is definitely noticeable, and the processing power of the Google Pixel 6 most definitely holds up to today's standards and is definitely comparable to some of the latest flagship phones. Now let's talk about the design of the Google Pixel 6 for a moment. The Pixel 6, of course, has the design of most other modern flagship phones with a glass back and, of course, a glass front display. The glass back enables wireless charging. The front display is an AMOLED panel, whereas OLED and AMOLED is the standard today. And the design of the Pixel 6 is overall still very modern, doesn't look outdated at all. And this camera visor is definitely still a very futuristic looking design. Now let's talk about the software. The Google Pixel 6 launched with Android 12 and supports up to the latest Android 14, with Android 15 coming very soon. The iPhone 13 launched with iOS 15, supports up to the latest iOS 17, and will be supporting iOS 18, which is also coming very soon. So there's nothing to worry about with software support on these two phones. The iPhone 13 is expected to support up to a minimum of at least iOS 22, whereas the Google Pixel 6 is likely going to support up to Android 16, expected to be discontinued from software updates in October of 2026. Now, if your choice is between the Google Pixel 6 and the iPhone 13, if software isn't a big decision for you and you only like to go off of specs, I would recommend the Google Pixel 6. But if you're a big software guy and you're an Apple user, Android is going to be a caveat of using the Pixel 6. So of course, one of the pros with the iPhone 13 is the fact that it runs iOS. The Pixel 6 Pros is just about everything else. Now I know my channel is Apple centered, so I hate bashing an iPhone for a video, but this is just the truth. Now let's talk about the price for these two smartphones. You can find a Google Pixel 6 refurbished on Amazon but for between $180 and $250, whereas the iPhone 13 is going to put you back anywhere between $300 and $400. Of course, it's an iPhone, the price is going to be higher, but if you're going for just the specs, again, I think the Pixel 6 is the better option. So overall, in 2024, the Google Pixel 6 actually really does hold up to the latest specs quite well, and for my 2 weeks of using it, runs extremely well even when compared side by side to my iPhone 14 Pro. In 2024, do I recommend the Google Pixel 6 if you're looking to get a new phone and don't mind Android? Absolutely 100%. But now it's time for you to decide down in the comments below. Let me know your opinion. Do you think the Google Pixel 6 is worth it in 2024? I'd love to hear your opinion, as I strongly do believe that it is. So this pretty much concludes the video, but if you're new here, please consider hitting that subscribe button, as of right now, only 9.6% of my viewers are actually subscribed. So if you're new, smash that subscribe button, as it'll really help me in reaching my goal of 5,000 subscribers. Anyways, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you make your decision on whether or not to purchase a Google Pixel 6. And if you're just here to listen to me, I hope you enjoyed listening to me bash the iPhone 13 for a little while. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Comment, like, and subscribe. And as always, peace out, guys.